It was supposed to be a quick detour. I had only planned to stop by the office for 10 minutes, grab the laptop I'd forgotten, and head back home before dinner. Nothing more. But the strange thing about life is that it doesn't usually ask for permission before changing everything. Sometimes it just drops a truth in your lap when you're least prepared, a moment so small, so seemingly ordinary you don't even realize it was the moment everything cracked until long after the dust settles. I was already halfway home when I realized the laptop wasn't in the passenger seat. I muttered under my breath and exited the highway. My office is in a business complex out near the outskirts of Austin, nothing flashy, just a modern, quiet row of buildings that hum quietly with fluorescent light and tired ambition after 6 p.m. Next to our building is a mid-range hotel. We've used it a few times when out-of-town partners visit or when clients want to extend meetings late into the night. I'd never paid much attention to it. Just a place. Just background noise. But that evening, as I pulled into the nearly empty parking lot and K** led the engine, something felt off. Maybe it was the time, it was already dark, well past standard office hours. Or maybe it was just a strange gut pull, the kind of unspoken signal you don't notice until your brain catches up. I stepped out, locked the car, and started toward the building when movement from the corner of my eye froze me in place. It was her. Ashley. She was stepping out of the side entrance of the hotel. Not the main lobby, the side. The kind of exit you take when you don't want to be seen. Her hair was pulled back in a quick twist, her coat barely hanging on her shoulders. She looked around quickly, not noticing me, and adjusted the collar as she rushed toward the curb. And then he followed. A man. Mid-30s, I guessed. Confident posture. His jacket still unzipped, shirt collar open just enough to hint at comfort, not haste. He wasn't someone I recognized, not from her office Christmas parties or from our friend group. No, this man was a stranger, and yet he walked behind my wife with the unmistakable closeness of someone who belonged. She didn't look back. She raised a hand and flagged down a taxi already approaching. It stopped smoothly like they'd called it in advance. He opened the door for her. She slid in. Then he followed. And they were gone. Just like that. As if none of it had ever happened. I stood there in the cold, barely breathing, the sound of the cab fading into the night. My mind couldn't decide what to do first. Chase the cab, call her, walk inside like I'd seen nothing at all. But before I could move, my phone buzzed. It was her. Ashley lit up my screen like an accusation. I answered. She sounded calm, no, not calm. Composed. Too composed. She said she'd gone to visit Claire, her friend from college. Claire had suffered a breakdown, she said. Some emergency, out of town. She'd driven over an hour to a clinic outside the city. She was just now leaving and probably wouldn't be home for another hour or two. She asked me what I was doing. I lied. I said I was still in traffic, hadn't made it home either. Then I asked casually, too casually, were you near the Marriott earlier? Her voice caught. Barely. A flicker. What, she asked. I just thought I saw someone who looked like you near the hotel next to my office. There was silence. Then a soft, scornful laugh. Ben, are you serious? You think I'd go to a hotel in the middle of the day? What, are you getting paranoid now? I didn't answer. Because I didn't know how. Everything in me wanted to scream, to confront her, to tell her what I saw with my own eyes, but my mouth betrayed me. Instead, I mumbled something about just wondering, and she moved on like nothing had happened. She changed the subject so fast it felt like whiplash. Asked if I could pick up milk on the way home. Told me not to forget the package by the door. Ordinary things. Familiar tones. Like she hadn't just lied to my face. When the call ended, I sat in the car and stared at my reflection in the windshield. There's a moment after betrayal, before the grief hits, when you just sit with disbelief. It wasn't even anger yet, it was just static. My brain couldn't accept what my eyes had already confirmed. I didn't tell anyone. Not my brother. Not my best friend, Nate. I didn't even open my mouth to speak of it to the mirror when I got home and washed my face like a ghost. But I couldn't unsee what I saw. Couldn't unhear the lies she told not 10 minutes after stepping out of a hotel with another man. That night, she came home late. Said traffic was horrible, that Claire needed her, that everything was just exhausting. I watched her move around the kitchen like nothing was wrong. She poured a glass of water, opened the fridge, scrolled through her phone. Not once did she look at me for more than a second. Not once did she act like she'd seen me earlier. Because she didn't know. And I didn't tell her. I went to bed early that night, feigned sleep. She didn't even come in until after midnight. I heard the shower. The soft padding of her feet. The sound of her phone vibrating on the nightstand, then being silenced. She slept facing away from me. I stared at the ceiling. That was the first night I truly realized how long I'd been lying to myself. We weren't close anymore. Not really. The excuses had crept in slowly: long hours at the law firm, stress, headaches, friend obligations. The way she turned away from kisses, the stiffness in her hugs, the tiredness that always showed up when I suggested a weekend away. I had chalked it up to life. To busy schedules. To the routine erosion of comfort over time. But that night, lying beside a woman I no longer recognized, I understood the truth. I had been living beside a lie for longer than I dared admit. And that lie had just waved down a taxi. The morning after seeing Ashley exit that hotel, the world looked the same, but nothing felt familiar. I sat behind the wheel in our driveway, watching the garage door close in the rearview mirror, hands still on the ignition, unsure why I hadn't yet started driving. The coffee she'd brewed was sitting untouched in the cup holder, already cold. She'd kissed me on the cheek before leaving, same as always, and smiled like nothing had changed. As if I hadn't watched her step out of a hotel with a stranger and lie straight to my face less than 12 hours earlier. But something had changed. I backed out and drove in silence, no music, no radio, just the sound of tires on asphalt and the low hum of an engine. Every red light gave my mind more time to unpack things I'd ignored for months. And I had ignored so much. Ashley and I had been married almost 9 years. We met when I was working in Dallas and she was finishing law school. Back then, everything had been intense: late-night phone calls, passionate weekends, the kind of bond that feels unbreakable when you're both still believing in the best versions of each other. But life settles. People change. Or maybe I thought they reveal what was always beneath the surface. The thing is, the signs had been there. Clear as daylight, I just hadn't wanted to connect the dots. The first red flag was subtle, a shift in how she touched me. Or rather, how she didn't. Physical closeness disappeared like a switch had been flipped. At first, it was just less frequent: a turned shoulder in bed, a kiss that didn't linger. But then weeks passed. Months. I started initiating less because the rejection was quieter that way. Easier. She always had an excuse. Long hours. Stress. Court cases that drained her. Headaches. Hormonal changes. I tried to be supportive. Tried not to take it personally. But how do you ignore a wall growing between you and the person you share a bed with? Then came the changes in her appearance. She started dressing differently, subtly at first: new earrings, fresh blouses, heels I hadn't seen before. Nothing extravagant, just polished. Intentional. I noticed a new perfume one morning when she passed by the bathroom door. I joked about it. She said it was a gift from a client. Then another fragrance appeared. Then another. She said they were on sale at a boutique near the courthouse. I didn't press. But I should have. Her phone habits changed next. It used to be an open book, unlocked, face up on the table, forgotten on the couch. Now it was always in her hand or face down. One day I picked it up to hand it to her while she was cooking, and it lit up with a notification from someone named T. The screen dimmed before I could register more. She snatched it from my hand with a laugh, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. She started setting passwords. Claimed she had to because of confidential client stuff. Said the firm required it. And maybe they did, but I didn't believe that was the whole reason. Because she also started taking her phone into the bathroom, into the laundry room, into the backyard while pretending to water plants she didn't care about. I remember the night she told me she was working late because of a last-minute filing emergency. I'd offered to bring her dinner. She told me not to, said she wasn't even sure if she'd get a break to eat. I drove by her office anyway. Not to snoop, at least, that's what I told myself, but just to feel close to her. Just to feel like I was still part of her world. Her car wasn't in the parking lot. I sat there for a while, convincing myself she must have taken a rideshare, that she was at the courthouse or some off-site deposition. She didn't come home until after midnight. I asked how it went. She said she didn't want to talk about it, poured a glass of wine, and went to bed. Another time, I woke up in the middle of the night and reached for her, but the bed beside me was cold. I waited a few minutes before getting up. The kitchen light was on. I found her sitting at the table in her robe, scrolling through her phone. I couldn't sleep, she said without looking up. I came down to make tea. It was 2:30 in the morning. The kettle was still cold. No cup in sight. I didn't ask questions that night. I just went back to bed and stared at the ceiling, trying to silence the gnawing in my gut. But that feeling that something wasn't right never left. And now, after what I saw at the hotel, it was no longer just a feeling. It was evidence. A truth trying to claw its way to the surface through layers of denial and hope. Even the way she spoke to me had shifted. She used to ask how my day was. Genuinely listen. Laugh at my stories from work, even the boring ones. But lately, our conversations had become transactional. Can you pick up groceries? Don't forget to pay the water bill. Did you mail the insurance forms? Sometimes we could go an entire evening without having a single real interaction. And when I did bring it up, when I asked why we felt so distant, she had answers at the ready. Stress, fatigue, pressure from partners at her firm. She promised things would calm down soon. Said we should plan a weekend getaway when things settled. That weekend never came. And eventually, I stopped asking. What haunted me the most were the little inconsistencies, things that didn't quite add up. The scarf she misplaced that I later found in her trunk, stained with something that smelled like whiskey. The receipt I saw sticking out of her purse from a steakhouse in San Antonio, a place I knew she'd never gone with me. She claimed it was from a group lunch after a conference. But she hadn't mentioned any conference. She started mentioning a name I didn't recognize, Travis, a junior associate at the firm. Said he was clumsy but brilliant, a guy who made everyone laugh during stressful court prep. She brought him up just enough to make him seem harmless. But something about it felt planted. Like she wanted me to know his name, but in a way that discouraged any suspicion. I thought about all of it as I sat in my office that morning, staring blankly at my monitor. My inbox was full, my phone buzzing every few minutes, but I couldn't focus on a single word. The timeline in my head wouldn't stop rearranging itself. This started months ago. Maybe longer. How long had I been the outsider in my own marriage? I used to think affairs were sudden. That people just snapped one day and crossed a line. But now I understood they grow in silence. In the unanswered questions. In the nights spent back to back, both pretending to sleep. In the lies too small to confront but too big to forget. She'd built a second life, brick by careful brick, and I hadn't noticed. Or maybe I had. Maybe I just hadn't wanted to face what those bricks were made of. It wasn't just the hotel anymore. That had been the catalyst. But the truth had been living among us for far longer. And now, like rot beneath the floorboards, it was starting to rise through the cracks. By the time Friday rolled around, I had convinced myself that I could endure the limbo, that maybe it was safer not to know everything, that maybe it was still salvageable if I just held on a little longer. That was the illusion I was clinging to, even if deep down I knew better. But the thing about truth is, it doesn't wait for your permission. It comes when it's ready, and when it does, it doesn't knock. That afternoon, I left work early. Not for any particular reason, just one of those gut pulls again. Maybe I was tired of pretending everything was normal. Maybe I was just restless, looking for something to shake me out of the daze. I told my assistant I had to pick up a birthday gift for my niece, which wasn't a lie. Her party was on Sunday. I drove across town to a shopping center Ashley and I used to visit back when we still spent weekends together doing things that felt like marriage. I pulled into the parking lot and cut the engine. The sun was just beginning to fall behind the buildings, casting a soft orange light across the windshield. I was halfway through a mental checklist of toy stores when my eyes caught something in the corner of the lot. Ashley's car. The same white Audi she claimed had been in the shop all week due to a brake issue. I'd even offered to drive her to work, but she said a coworker was already giving her rides. The shop had apparently needed more time than expected to order a part. I hadn't questioned it. Why would I? But there it was, unmistakable, parked clean and flawless between a Tesla and a black minivan. No sign of recent repair. Not even a smudge. I didn't react. I didn't storm over or call her. I just got out, locked my car, and started walking. I passed store after store, not knowing what I was looking for until I saw them through the glass of a small cafe near the center of the plaza. A quiet place tucked between a bookstore and a salon. I'd eaten there with Ashley once, years ago. There she was. Ashley sat at a table by the window, laughing at something. Her posture was relaxed, leaning slightly forward, her hand resting near the edge of the table, dangerously close to the hand of the man across from her. It was the same man from the hotel. There was no confusion this time. No tricks of the light or poor angles. I saw his face clearly now. Dark hair, a little tousled. Confident smile. Trim beard. He wore a light blue shirt and leaned toward her with the casual macy of someone who had done it many times before. He reached across the table, laid his hand gently on her knee, and she didn't flinch. Didn't pull away. She looked happy. That was the part that hit the hardest. It wasn't a guilty look. It wasn't awkwardness or anxiety. It was ease. Joy. She smiled at him the way she hadn't smiled at me in months, years, maybe. A natural, open smile I thought she'd lost to work stress or age or the slow decline of routine. But it was still there. Just never for me. He pulled out his phone and she leaned in to look at something on the screen. Her hand slipped further over his. She laughed again and then, without hesitation, she kissed him on the cheek. Not a clumsy mistake. Not a moment of weakness. This was rehearsed. Familiar. Comfortable. I stepped back, out of view, pressing myself between two decorative columns beside the window of the bookstore. I could hear blood pounding in my ears. For a second I thought I was going to throw up. This was it. The answer. The moment that burned the last shred of doubt to ash. There was no business meeting. No breakdown from a friend. No car in the shop. She had been lying with fluency, not just once, but as a way of life. I didn't storm in. I didn't throw open the door and demand an explanation. That might have felt satisfying in a different story, but not this one. I knew that any confrontation in that moment would only end in lies, excuses, maybe even a performance for his benefit. And I was done with performances. So I turned around and walked back to my car. My hands shook as I unlocked the door. I sat for a few minutes, unsure what to do next. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just sat, stunned, trying to figure out when everything had turned into this twisted farce. Had it started 6 months ago? A year? Could it have gone back even further? Then I remembered the man. I had only seen him twice, but that was enough. At the hotel, and now here, no wedding ring either time. But something about his face had stayed with me. Later that night, I'd search social media for anyone tagged in Ashley's photos or comments. Eventually, I found him. His name was Grant. He worked in commercial real estate, judging by the company name on his profile. One of those overly polished types, always at mixers and conferences. Smug smile in every photo. Scrolling through, I found someone else, a woman named Melissa, listed as his wife. She appeared in photo after photo, dressed to the nines at fundraisers and corporate events. Married 6 years. 2 kids, based on the pictures. I stared at one picture for a long time, Melissa and Grant on vacation, kids in front, the beach in the background. Happy. Normal. Fake. I could have done nothing. Could have buried it, protected my image, saved myself the drama. But as I sat in the car, still parked in front of that cafe, something in me snapped, not out of revenge, but clarity. If I didn't speak, this would just keep happening. I'd rot in this lie. She'd get to keep smiling while I kept dying quietly. So I took out my phone and opened the security camera app for the shopping center, something I only had because of a project I'd worked on with their property management firm months back. I found the angle I needed, *T the footage of Ashley and Grant sitting together. Not grainy. Not vague. Clear. I found Melissa's profile again. Sent her a private message. I didn't introduce myself. Didn't explain. Just attached the image and wrote, "You deserve to know who your husband's with." I stared at it for 10 minutes before hitting send. I wasn't sure if it was the right thing to do. I wasn't sure if I had crossed a line or simply drawn one in the sand. But once it was out, I felt something loosen in my chest. A reply came 15 minutes later. "Thank you." That was all. No emotion. No questions. Just 2 words that hit like a thunderclap. An hour later, the chaos began. Ashley called me. Then again. Then came a text. Then 3. The first was, "Where are you?" The next, "Did you do something?" Then, "We need to talk. Now." By the time I got home, my phone was buzzing nonstop. I didn't respond. I didn't feel fear or regret. I felt a strange calm, like I'd been underwater for years and had finally surfaced. I sat in the quiet of the house, in the chair by the window, and listened to the silence. For once, it didn't feel empty. It felt like truth. And I wasn't afraid of it anymore. I didn't go back to work that afternoon. I couldn't have held a conversation, let alone managed a team meeting. The office, the projects, the meetings, they all felt like echoes from a past life. I just drove. Nowhere in particular at first. Just the hum of the road and the rhythmic pulse of my turn signal blinking in an empty lane. I passed the familiar landmarks of our life, the bakery we used to visit on Sundays, the park where we took the dog before she got too old to walk, the gas station where Ashley once left a note on my dashboard just to say she loved me. I passed them all without stopping. None of them felt real anymore. What I'd seen and what I'd finally accepted had collapsed something fundamental inside me. I wasn't just grieving a betrayal. I was grieving the time I'd lost being blind. I kept asking myself how long I had allowed myself to be played, made small, held hostage by the possibility that she might still love me if I just did the right thing, said the right words, became the version of myself she once adored. But now I knew better. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't afraid of what came next. The sun was setting when I pulled into the driveway. I half expected to see her car already there, expected her waiting inside like a storm in high heels, rehearsing her excuses, twisting the narrative. But the house was still empty. I walked in, locked the door behind me, and stood there in the hallway. My bag slid off my shoulder, thudding softly on the floor. It was quiet. Still. That kind of thick silence that feels like it's listening to you. I poured myself a drink. Just one. I needed clarity, not fog. Then I sat down with my laptop and opened a folder I'd been building for months, long before I even realized what I was doing. Screensh asterisk TS of messages I'd glimpsed. Photos from her Instagram stories where she claimed to be at the office but the scenery in the background said otherwise. Voice memos I'd saved when she left voicemails at odd hours, some of them slightly slurred, giggling, not meant for me. The final piece was a screen recording from earlier that day, the security camera footage from the cafe. Time-stamped. Clear. Her hand on his. Her leaning in. Her smile. That kiss? It was all there. I uploaded everything to a cloud folder, password protected it, and sent it to myself, to my lawyer, and to a backup email I hadn't used in years. I didn't know if I'd need it, but I wasn't going to be caught off guard. Not anymore. I was in the middle of packing a small duffel, just essentials, when the front door opened without warning. Ashley. She didn't call out my name. She didn't slam the door. She walked in like she lived here, which technically she still did. She was dressed differently than earlier, probably changed in a restroom somewhere. Same heels. Same scent. But the softness she wore with Grant was gone. She was stiff. Eyes sharp. Hands tense. I waited in the hallway, leaning against the wall, listening to the sound of her heels clicking on the tile. When she saw me, she froze just for a split second. Then she smiled. A performance smile. The kind that doesn't touch the eyes. Hey, she said, like we hadn't been playing Russian roulette with our marriage. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. She knew. Her expression shifted quickly, as if some internal alarm told her the act wasn't working. She stepped forward. I need to talk to you. I nodded once and stepped aside. She walked into the living room like a prosecutor entering court, tossing her bag on the couch, spinning to face me with arms crossed. You had no right to contact Melissa, she snapped. There it was. No apology. No explanation. Just accusation. You don't get to blow up someone's life like that, she continued. That was not your place. I didn't say anything. I just watched her. She kept going. Words like betrayal, privacy, cruelty, even revenge were thrown out like darts. She paced. Her voice rose. Her hands moved faster than her mouth, gesturing, slicing the air. Her anger wasn't about guilt, it was about being exposed. It was about losing control. I didn't plan for this to happen, she finally said, her voice cracking slightly. It just did. Things haven't been good between us for a long time, Ben. You know that. Now she wanted understanding. Now she wanted to play the card of emotional neglect, as if she hadn't rejected every effort I made to bridge the gap. As if months of indifference, distance, and deceit could be pinned on miscommunication and tiredness. Still, I said nothing. Then she saw the duffel bag near the stairs. Her voice dropped. What's that? I pointed at it calmly. I'm leaving. She blinked. What do you mean? I didn't raise my voice. I didn't hurl accusations. I didn't feed her another chance to twist the story. I'm done, I said. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. I've already spoken to an attorney, I added. I'm filing for separation. There's a folder in your email. It has everything. Read it before you think about denying anything. She stepped toward me, slower this time. Her tone changed again, not angry now. Pleading. Then, wait. You don't have to do this. Please. I made a mistake, but we can now. I shook my head. You haven't touched me in over 8 months, Ashley, I said. You made it clear you weren't interested. You stopped talking to me. You left me out of your life before you ever walked into that hotel room with him. She flinched like I'd slapped her. I wasn't cruel. I wasn't loud. But truth has a way of cutting deeper than rage ever could. She started crying. Maybe real. Maybe not. I didn't care anymore. Tears don't undo decisions. She tried to close the space between us, reaching for my hand, but I stepped back. You don't get to decide how this ends, I said softly. Not this time. For once, she was the one left speechless. I picked up the bag, grabbed my keys, and headed for the door. She followed, still speaking fragments of apologies, justifications, half-formed pleas. But I didn't turn around. I opened the door and stepped into the night. The air felt different, colder, clearer, more honest. Like the world was finally aligning with what I'd known in my bones for months. As I drove to a hotel across town, I passed a billboard advertising couples therapy. It made me laugh. Not a bitter laugh, just quiet and knowing. That ship had long sailed. Maybe Ashley would sit on a couch one day and tell some stranger about how I just gave up. But I would know the truth. I didn't give up. I just stopped accepting less than I deserved. And for the first time, I wasn't running from anything. I was walking towards something else entirely. The next few days passed like a strange fever dream, the kind where everything moves in slow motion and you're both inside the moment and watching it from outside your own body. I checked into a modest business hotel on the east side of Austin. Nothing fancy. Just clean, anonymous, quiet. I didn't tell anyone where I was. I didn't post anything. I kept my phone on silent, let the texts pile up without reading them. Ashley called 37 times in 2 days. Left 12 voicemails. Each one more frantic than the last. I didn't listen to a single one. Instead, I watched the sun rise and fall outside the hotel window. I took long walks. I went to the gym. I answered work emails like nothing in my life had collapsed. And in some strange way, it hadn't. Something had actually been built, not collapsed, because now there was structure where before there was confusion. I had made a decision. I had stepped outside the fog of emotional manipulation. That brought clarity. Peace. But I knew it wouldn't last forever. Ashley wouldn't let me disappear so easily. She was too used to controlling the conversation. Too used to being believed. And when her voice stopped working, she would come in person. I was sure of it. I didn't have to wait long. On the third day, I returned to the house to pick up a few important documents I hadn't had the foresight to grab during my exit: tax records, insurance policies, the deed for the cabin in Marble Falls. I waited until the afternoon, assuming she'd be at work. But when I pulled into the driveway, her car was already there. I sat for a while, hands on the wheel, staring at the closed garage door. Part of me wanted to back out and come another time. Part of me didn't want to see her again, not yet. But the stronger part, the one that had walked away without hesitation, told me it was time to confront this fully. When I stepped inside, the air felt charged like static before a storm. She was sitting at the kitchen island, nursing a cup of tea she didn't drink, eyes fixed on the front door like she'd been waiting there for hours. "Ben," she said. Her voice was soft, almost rehearsed. I didn't respond. I closed the door behind me, locked it out of habit, and walked straight past her toward the hallway where the filing cabinet was. She followed, barefoot, nervous energy radiating from her. "Can we talk?" she asked. I didn't stop moving. "I'm just here for the documents." "Please," she said more forcefully. "You can't just walk away like this. We need to talk about what you did." That stopped me cold. "What I did?" She hesitated, but her voice picked up the familiar rhythm of indignation. "You blindsided me. You didn't even give me a chance to explain. You humiliated me. You sent pictures to his wife." She deserved the truth, I interrupted. "And I didn't?" I turned to her fully now. "You had the truth. You just buried it under months of lies." She folded her arms, defensive. "It wasn't like that." "Really?" I pulled out my phone, opened the cloud folder, and tapped on one of the videos, the footage from the cafe. I let the image play without sound. Her hand on his. The kiss. The smiles. The lies made visible. Ashley looked away. I paused the video and slipped the phone back into my pocket. "You want to talk? Fine. Let's talk. You started sleeping with someone else while we were still married. While I was still showing up trying to hold this together. While I was asking what was wrong and getting shut down every time." "I wasn't sleeping with him," she said quickly. "Not at first." That made me laugh. Not loud. Just a small, bitter exhale. "You want credit for the timing?" "No," she snapped. "I just want you to understand that it wasn't all fake. I wasn't trying to hurt you. I didn't plan for this to happen. You didn't plan it, but you protected it. You covered for it. You looked me in the eyes and lied again and again." "I was unhappy," she said. "You never noticed. You were always working, always distracted. We stopped connecting. I didn't feel seen." There it was. The pivot. The rewiring of blame. I nodded slowly. "You didn't feel seen. So instead of talking to me, you started sneaking around with a married man? I didn't mean for it to get serious. But it did. And now you're only sorry because you got caught." She didn't deny it. Just stared at the floor, jaw clenched, breathing shallow. For a moment, I felt something stir in me, not love, not pity, but recognition. The woman in front of me wasn't the person I'd married. Or maybe she was, and I just hadn't seen it. Maybe I'd only ever loved the version she let me see. I pulled open the filing cabinet and grabbed the folders I needed. When I turned back around, she was still standing there, arms folded, shoulders tense. "I still love you," she whispered. I paused. "No. You love the control. You love the comfort. You love what I did for you. But if you'd really loved me, you wouldn't have broken us like this. I made a mistake." "No. A mistake is a wrong turn. This was a path. You walked it every day. You chose it." She stepped toward me again, slower this time. "Don't throw everything away." I took a breath. Then I said what I hadn't said before, what I hadn't even said to myself. "It's already gone, Ashley." And that was the end of it. I walked past her, down the hallway, and stopped by the front door to pick up an envelope I'd prepared earlier that morning, a notice of separation, signed and dated. I placed it on the entry table. "You should start packing," I said without looking back. "You've got 30 days. "What do you mean?" "I own the house," I replied. "We bought it under my name before we got married. My lawyer already filed the paperwork. You can stay for now, but not forever." The silence behind me was heavy. Then she said the one thing I didn't expect: "I'll fight you for it." That made me turn. Her eyes were burning now. The mask was off. All the softness, all the staged regret, gone. This was the version of her that made people squirm in courtrooms. The predator beneath the victimhood. "I'm sure you will," I said. "But you won't win." She opened her mouth, but I cut her off. "The evidence is already with my attorney. Texts, emails, phone records, security footage, voice memos, bank statements. I even have location data from the cloud you forgot to turn off. If you want to go to war, Ashley, I'm ready." Her face changed again. For the first time truly, I saw fear. Not fear of loss. Fear of exposure. Of consequences. Of losing the narrative. "You really planned this," she said bitterly. "No. I just stopped pretending it wasn't happening." I walked out without another word. Outside, the wind had picked up. The sky was streaked with clouds, threatening rain. I didn't rush to my car. I stood on the porch for a moment, listening to the wind chimes she'd hung 2 summers ago, the ones I used to find annoying. Now their sound felt like punctuation. A chapter ending. I got in the car and drove away from the house we used to call home. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel broken. I felt steady. Like a tree that had finally stopped bending and let itself break, not to fall, but to grow again. And in that moment I realized something else. The real confrontation hadn't been with Ashley. It had been with myself. And I had finally won. The house was quiet again after that final confrontation. She stayed a few more nights in the guest room, but it was only a formality. The walls were no longer shared, even if the roof still was. We moved like strangers through familiar space. She stopped making small talk. I stopped pretending to listen. Ashley tried everything to pull the narrative back into her hands. She threatened to lawyer up, talked about assets, joint purchases, emotional distress. But the reality was she had nothing solid to stand on. I had prepared well. The house, the accounts, even the cabin, all under my name, all clean. The evidence I'd collected wasn't out of bitterness, but survival. Truth has a way of stacking up when you stop looking away. When her threats didn't land, she pivoted, tried pity next. She cried one evening in the kitchen, said she missed what we had, said she was lost. But I didn't bite. I'd already lived that scene in my head too many times. Every apology now felt like a strategy, not a confession. So I stayed calm. I let the lawyers talk. Let the paperwork move forward. She fought to keep the car, and I let her have it. She wanted a share of the cabin, and my attorney sent over logs, tax statements, and a politely worded no. The legal system wasn't on her side this time. That scared her. But what struck me most wasn't her panic. It was how quickly she stopped fighting once she realized she couldn't control the story anymore. That's when the truth finally hit her. She hadn't lost a man. She'd lost her ability to manipulate one. And that was the only thing she'd ever truly valued. The day she left for good, the silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was clean. No tears, no door slamming, no last-ditch arguments. Just her figure disappearing down the driveway. Her trunk loaded with boxes she once insisted were ours. Now they were hers alone. I didn't watch her drive away. I closed the door and stood in the hallway for a long time. Something in the air had shifted. The space didn't feel hollow. It felt new, like a room finally cleared of smoke. I poured myself a drink, opened the windows, and let the air move through every room. For the first time in years, the house felt like mine. My refuge, my truth. That night, I sat on the back porch with a glass of whiskey and no thoughts about who wasn't texting me. No analyzing half-lies. No wondering if a laugh was meant for someone else. I watched the sky turn purple and gold, and I just breathed. A message came later, from a number I didn't recognize at first. Then I remembered, Melissa, the wife of the man Ashley had chosen over me. "Now I know everything," she wrote. "Thank you for not staying silent." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Somewhere out there, someone else had found their truth too. And maybe, like me, they weren't broken, just finally free. Ashley thought I'd chase her. that I'd fight, that I'd suffer. But she was wrong. I didn't need her to choose me. I just needed to choose myself. And I finally did.